Deep beneath the ground, where sunlight never touched, a ruined alien temple waited in silence, its black stone walls older than memory itself, its halls carved with lines that glowed faintly like dying stars, and the air smelled of dust, iron, and something that did not belong to Earth, a taste of another world. The human expedition moved carefully through the ruins, boots crunching over broken tiles that had not felt footsteps in 1,000 years, their rifles ready but their voices low, because even the sound of their breath felt too loud in such a place. At the front walked Kara, a soldier not ranked high, not the kind to command, yet her eyes kept drifting to the strange symbols carved into the stone, shapes that twisted in her mind like half-remembered dreams. The alien guide, tall and thin with skin like silver glass, carried a small device that hummed as it read the ancient language, and the humans followed him deeper into the darkness, their lamps throwing sharp beams across walls filled with faces of gods, alien figures towering, their eyes like suns, their hands stretched in judgment. They reached the heart of the temple, where a giant stone tablet stood in silence, half buried under the weight of centuries, yet glowing faint red as if a fire still burned inside it. The translator touched its surface and the device sparked to life, glowing symbols floating in the air. The humans stepped closer, their shadows long across the walls, and then Kara froze, her hand lifting without thought, her eyes fixed on the glowing marks. They were not just symbols. They were scars she had carried since she was a child, strange burn-like lines across her arm and shoulder, scars no doctor could explain. Her chest tightened as she saw them shining back at her, carved into alien stone thousands of years before she was even born. The others noticed her silence, their eyes turning to her, and before anyone could speak, the alien translator's device began to speak the words. The voice was mechanical, cold, yet heavy with weight as it said, "Only rebels against the gods carry these marks." The sound cut through the silence like a blade. For a long second no one moved. The humans looked at Kara, then at the tablet, then back at her again. The alien guide hissed, stepping back in fear, his skin flickering with a faint light like panic. He whispered to himself in his own tongue, words the device did not translate, but the fear in his eyes spoke enough. One of the human soldiers asked what it meant, why the marks were the same, but the alien translator only shook his head, his hands trembling. "These are the signs of rebellion," he said at last, his voice low, "and rebellion against the gods is death." The soldiers shifted uneasily, their fingers tightening on their rifles, their breath shallow. Kara stared at her scars, her mind racing, memories flashing of every doctor who told her they were meaningless, every time she had wondered why she alone carried them. Now she knew they were not random. They were ancient, they were dangerous, and they had been waiting for her. The air in the temple grew colder, though no wind blew. The glowing tablet pulsed once, like a heartbeat, and the red light grew stronger, filling the chamber with shadows that seemed to move. The alien guide backed toward the entrance, muttering that they had to leave, that they had woken something not meant to be touched. Another soldier muttered that this was madness, just superstition, but even as he spoke his voice trembled. The translator device began to spit out more words unasked, as if the stone itself wanted to be heard. "Rebels shall rise again," it whispered, "and the fire shall burn the stars." Kara's heart pounded. The humans looked at one another, trying to decide whether to destroy the tablet, record it, or flee, but before any choice could be made, the silence shattered. A deep alarm, ancient and mechanical, roared through the walls, echoing down every hallway, vibrating through the stone. Dust rained from the ceiling. Hidden machines that had slept for ages awoke, their lights burning to life in the corners of the temple. The ground trembled beneath their boots, and the air grew heavy with power. The alien guide screamed that the guardians had awoken, that nothing could stop them now. The humans raised their rifles as red lights flickered down the corridors like eyes opening. Kara did not run. She stood frozen, staring at the marks on her arm as they began to glow faintly in answer to the tablet. She felt heat under her skin, fire rising in her blood, and though fear filled her, there was also something else, a pull, as if the temple itself had been waiting for her arrival, as if the marks were keys and the locks had finally opened. The soldiers shouted her name, telling her to move, telling her to escape, but she only turned once toward them, her face pale yet steady, before the sound of heavy stone doors grinding open filled the chamber and shadows moved like giants beyond the light. The ancient temple was no longer silent. Something had awakened, something older than memory, and it had marked the humans as intruders. When the humans finally stumbled out of the ruins, the world above had changed, the sky was no longer quiet, for clouds burned red and heavy shadows moved across the heavens like predators circling prey, and the air itself felt thick with dread, every breath sharp in the chest as if the planet knew something was coming. Kara staggered into the daylight with the other soldiers, her scars still glowing faintly beneath her armor, a heat she could not explain spreading through her veins. The alien guide fell to his knees in the dust, his voice trembling as he pointed upward, whispering a single word over and over, a word that even the translator refused to speak, as though the device itself feared it. The soldiers looked up and saw them, vast ships sliding out of the clouds, their hulls black as obsidian, their shapes unnatural, like blades forged to cut the stars. Thousands of them, too many to count, moving in perfect silence, yet their presence crushed the air with invisible weight. The comms filled with static, then cleared, and a voice deeper than thunder spread across the skies. It spoke in every tongue at once, so that no ear could escape its meaning. The eternal watchers have come. The humans froze, their rifles useless against machines the size of mountains. Civilians on the surface screamed, running through cities as the ships blotted out the sun, casting long shadows that turned day into twilight. Kara could not move. The voice continued, echoing like judgment, "Among you walks the one marked by rebellion. Among you stands the cursed who carries the fire of the traitors. Surrender her, and your world may live." Soldiers turned their eyes to Kara, fear and confusion mixing in their faces, because the truth could not be hidden now, not when her scars still glowed faintly, not when the watchers themselves called her out. She felt every gaze like a weight pressing down on her chest. She was no leader, no chosen warrior, only a soldier ranked 112th in a list no one cared about, but the gods of the stars had spoken her name in their silence, and now humanity trembled because of it. The alien guide crawled backward on hands and knees, whispering that this was the end, that the watchers had ruled for 1,000 ages, that no one could oppose them and live. He spoke of worlds that had tried to resist, worlds that burned to ash within hours, their people erased, their names struck from memory. Kara clenched her fists, her heart racing, her mind screaming to deny it, yet inside she felt a strange pull, a whisper that the marks on her skin were not chains but fire. The commander of the unit stepped forward, his voice harsh but steady, saying that no one would be handed over, that Earth was not a world of slaves. But already whispers spread through the human ranks, some soldiers afraid, some angry, others simply stunned into silence. The voice of the watchers returned, colder now, sharper. Rebels will always burn, and those who shelter them burn with them. Then, without warning, one of the great ships split open, its sides peeling back like the ribs of a beast, and a massive hologram filled the sky. A figure appeared, not fully flesh, not fully machine, its face a mask of fire and shadow, its eyes pits of endless night. It stared directly at Kara, though miles of air separated them, and spoke in a voice that seemed to echo inside her skull. "The rebel fire burns again. You cannot escape." The soldiers raised their rifles instinctively, though they knew it was useless. Civilians fell to their knees, crying out to gods both alien and human, begging for mercy. Kara stood frozen, her mouth dry, her mind screaming that this could not be happening, that she was no one, that she had never wanted any of this. And yet, as the hologram's eyes bored into her, the scars on her arm flared brighter, pulsing like molten metal, and she felt a heat rise in her chest, not fear, not despair, but something else, something dangerous. The commander grabbed her shoulder, urging her back toward the base, but Kara's eyes stayed fixed on the figure in the sky, and for a single heartbeat it seemed to smile, as though it knew her already, as though it had been waiting for her since before she was born. The hologram vanished, the ships above shifted, and the voice declared that Earth had one cycle to decide: surrender the marked rebel or face fire from the stars. Then silence fell, heavy and crushing, broken only by the sobs of those who had heard. Kara stumbled backward, her breath shaking, her hands trembling, and for the first time she realized the truth: the marks had not cursed her. They had chosen her. But what they had chosen her for, she did not yet know. The night after the sky darkened with ships, Earth did not sleep. Cities trembled under the shadow of the watchers, every screen, every radio, every voice spoke of the ultimatum: surrender or burn, and in the middle of it all Kara sat in silence inside the military outpost, staring at the scars that still glowed faintly on her skin, wondering what power slept inside them and why they had chosen her. Around her, soldiers whispered, some with awe, others with fear, and the alien guide who had brought them into the ruins now refused to look at her at all, muttering prayers in his own tongue, saying she was marked by fire that could not be controlled. The commander entered, his face lined with the weight of choices too heavy, and placed a small device on the table, an artifact taken from the ruins, half broken but still alive, glowing with the same red light as the tablet. Kara leaned closer and the device came alive with streams of symbols. The translator stuttered, then began to speak, not in the cold mechanical tone of the past, but in a voice that felt human, a voice filled with sorrow and defiance. It spoke of a war long forgotten, a war where humans were not slaves, but leaders, where humanity rose against the Watchers with fire and steel and nearly brought them to their knees. The soldiers around the table leaned in, their eyes wide, as the voice told of fleets built in secret, battles fought in the dark void, and a rebellion that spread like wildfire across enslaved worlds. Kara's breath caught when the device whispered that the Watchers had almost lost, that the gods of the stars bled like mortals when struck, that fear once lived in their hearts. But then came betrayal, a great fall, and the Watchers struck back with weapons beyond imagination, burning entire human colonies to ash, wiping records, erasing names, until the galaxy believed humans were nothing but children in the dark. Kara's hands shook as she realized this was the truth no book had ever told, the truth stolen from memory. The voice continued, saying the marks were not a curse but a legacy, a sign carried by those chosen to rise again, carriers of fire passed through blood and time, waiting for the day when rebellion would be born anew. Kara wanted to deny it, wanted to scream that she was no chosen leader, that she was only a soldier buried on the bottom of every list, yet when she touched the device it pulsed with light, and her scars burned hot, glowing so bright that the soldiers stepped back in fear. One of them muttered that maybe this was fate, maybe the Watchers feared humans because humans had beaten them once and could do it again. But fear was strong, and not all shared the same thought. Another soldier argued that surrendering Kara would save billions of lives, that Earth was not ready to fight gods. The room split, whispers turned into sharp words, voices rose, but Kara heard none of it, her eyes fixed on the device as the voice spoke once more, softer now, almost like a secret whispered into her soul. The fire returns when the world is ready to burn, and only the marked can light the stars again. Her chest tightened, tears burning her eyes, because she had never wanted destiny, she had only wanted to be invisible, yet now the galaxy itself seemed to watch her. Suddenly alarms rang across the base, red lights flashing, the sound of engines roaring overhead. A soldier burst into the room shouting that the Watchers had deployed hunters, assassins bred to erase rebels before they could rise. Outside, shadows streaked across the sky, black crafts with wings like blades, their weapons glowing as they dove toward the base. Soldiers scrambled, rifles raised, shouting orders, the ground shook with the thunder of engines. Kara grabbed her weapon, though her hands trembled, and followed the commander outside where fire lit the horizon. The first hunter craft struck, plasma tearing through defenses, soldiers thrown to the ground, screams cutting through the night. Kara ran into the chaos, bullets flying, the air burning with smoke, and in the middle of the fight a hunter landed, its tall figure stepping through the flames, armored in black, its eyes glowing red, its weapon humming with death. It moved faster than any human, cutting through soldiers like shadows through glass, and Kara felt fear claw at her throat. She raised her rifle, fired, but the shots bounced harmlessly off its armor. The hunter turned toward her, its eyes locking with hers, and for a heartbeat the world froze. Her scars flared with blinding light, her rifle melted in her grip, and before she knew what she was doing she raised her hands. Fire burst from her skin, a wave of energy that struck the hunter full force, sending it crashing into the ruins with a roar. The battlefield went silent, soldiers staring at her with disbelief, some with terror, others with hope. Kara stood gasping, her hands still glowing, her body trembling as if the fire inside her had finally awoken. The hunter rose again, damaged but not destroyed, and for the first time Kara did not step back. She walked forward, fire burning in her veins, the marks on her skin blazing like stars, and for the first time the hunter hesitated, its red eyes flickering as if it had seen something it feared. The world was burning with whispers, and those whispers spread faster than fire in dry fields, moving from city to city, from ship to ship, until even distant colonies at the edge of the solar system had heard that humans carried the marks of rebellion, that one among them had struck down a hunter with fire in her veins, and in that whisper was something the Watchers had feared for ages, the dangerous seed of hope. Kara could feel it in the air, the way soldiers now looked at her not with doubt but with something heavier, expectation, and though she wanted to deny it, she could not erase the way her scars glowed brighter each time danger came close. Earth prepared for war in silence, fleets were moved into orbit, hidden bases awoke, but everyone knew the truth, humans alone could not match the endless fleets of the gods of the stars. Yet when news came that small uprisings had begun across alien worlds, that slaves had stolen weapons and shouted in the night that the rebels had returned, the soldiers of Earth began to believe that maybe the fight was not impossible, that maybe they were not alone. Kara walked through the halls of the command ship, her reflection dark in the polished steel, and heard her name whispered by men and women she had never met. She wanted to scream that she was not chosen, that she had never asked for this, but each time she touched the scars on her skin she felt the pulse of something older than herself, something that refused to be silent. In the War Council room, human leaders argued, their voices sharp as blades, some demanding they fight with Kara at the front, others insisting she be handed over before Earth burned like so many worlds before it. One general slammed his fist on the table, shouting that surrender would only delay the fire, that sooner or later the Watchers would destroy humanity whether Kara lived or not. The alien guide who had once brought them into the ruins now stood apart, his voice calm but filled with sorrow, warning that the Watchers had a weapon beyond imagination, a ship so vast it was called the Godkiller, a fortress of engines and death that could erase Earth in a single strike. The room fell into silence at those words, because even courage has limits, and to fight gods armed with such a weapon seemed like madness. Kara listened, her heart heavy, until finally she spoke, her voice low but steady, saying that she would not run, that she would not let the marks curse her into hiding, and that if rebellion was to rise, it had to rise now, before hope was drowned in fear. The council divided, but soldiers began to gather around her, choosing her without words, because sometimes leaders are not chosen by rank but by the fire others see. Days later, the sky tore apart when the Godkiller arrived, sliding into orbit like a shadow covering the sun, so vast it seemed to swallow the heavens, its engines glowing like the hearts of dying stars, its weapons long spines of black metal pointed at Earth. Fear spread through cities, millions staring upward as sirens screamed and screens flickered with the image of the Watchers declaring that the rebel would be delivered or the world would burn. Yet in the silence that followed, Kara's voice was broadcast, not a speech of polished words but simple truth, telling the people of Earth that they were not slaves, that fear was the weapon of gods, and that humanity had always survived not because it bowed but because it stood. Her words traveled farther than she thought, carried across secret channels, reaching alien worlds where others listened, and in the darkness of their chains, they whispered back, "The rebels have returned." Then the sky became fire as the Watchers unleashed their first strike, beams of energy tearing through the atmosphere, burning defenses in orbit. Human ships rose to meet them, fragile in size but burning with desperation, their weapons lighting the void. The battle was chaos, the Watchers' fleet endless, yet every human pilot fought as if the stars themselves depended on their fire. Kara stood in the command deck, her hands gripping the rail as the Godkiller loomed ahead, its shadow falling across the Earth like judgment. The commander beside her said there was no way to break it, that every weapon would vanish against its shields, but Kara felt the marks burn across her skin, the same pull she had felt in the ruins, and she knew the fight had to go beyond ships and guns. She turned to the soldiers who waited, their eyes on her, and said only, "We may be marked as rebels, but maybe rebels are what the galaxy needs." Her words struck something in them, something that no weapon could, and when the call came to send a strike team against the Godkiller, it was Kara they followed, boarding the shuttle in silence, their faces grim but steady, because sometimes courage is not found in winning but in standing when the stars themselves demand you kneel. As the shuttle broke away from the fleet and dove toward the massive ship of the gods, Kara felt the fire inside her grow hotter, brighter, and for the first time she did not fear it, she embraced it, because maybe the galaxy did not need gods, maybe it only needed rebels. The shuttle cut through the void like a dart of fire against an ocean of black, engines screaming as it raced toward the Godkiller, the massive ship that filled the sky like a floating continent, its hull bristling with towers of weapons, its shields glowing faintly like a second skin, and every soldier inside knew they were flying into the jaws of death, yet none turned back because Kara was with them, sitting silent, her scars glowing faint under her armor, her eyes fixed on the beast ahead. Outside, the battle raged, human ships burning in streaks of light, fragments of metal drifting like ash across space, yet still they fought, their voices on comms sharp and desperate, calling out kills and losses, refusing to surrender even as the Watchers crushed them with endless fire. The shuttle shuddered as beams tore past, alarms blaring, and the pilot swore that they would never make it through the shield, but Kara rose from her seat, her hand pressed against the cold metal wall, and for a moment the marks on her skin blazed, their light spreading across the hull like veins of fire. The shuttle screamed, pushed harder, and against all logic, against every calculation, it slipped through the shield as if the gods themselves had opened the way. Inside the Godkiller, the corridors were endless black steel, lit with a faint red glow, and the air was thick with the hum of machines older than human history. The soldiers moved fast, rifles ready, every step echoing like thunder in the hollow halls. Kara led them without speaking, the fire in her blood pulling her deeper, guiding her toward something she could not name. Then the shadows moved. Watcher soldiers, tall and twisted, armored in black with eyes burning like molten glass, stepped from the walls, their weapons humming with deadly light. The fight was chaos, gunfire tearing the silence, plasma hissing against steel, shouts filling the air, and for every soldier that fell, another stepped forward, because none of them had come to survive, they had come to strike at the heart of gods. Kara fought like one born for battle, her marks flaring each time her weapon fired, her body moving faster than thought, and when a Watcher soldier broke through the line, towering over her with a blade of light, she raised her bare hand and fire burst from her palm, hurling it backward in a scream of metal and shadow. The soldiers stared, but there was no time for questions, only survival, only forward. They pushed deeper, past endless corridors of black steel, past walls carved with alien faces that watched them like judges, until at last they reached the throne chamber. It was vast, a cathedral of machinery, its ceiling lost in shadows, its floor alive with rivers of red energy that pulsed like blood. At the center stood the Watcher leader, taller than the rest, his armor black as a starless void, his mask glowing with the fire of a dying sun, and when he turned, his eyes pierced through Kara as though nothing else in the universe existed. He spoke, his voice deep and terrible, echoing without sound yet rattling their bones. Your kind were always too stubborn to bow, too blind to see the chains that hold the stars. The fire in you is not power. It is a curse that always ends in ash. Kara stepped forward, her soldiers behind her, though fear hung on them like chains, and she answered with a voice steady though her heart pounded, saying that humans had bowed enough, that no god could rule forever, and that maybe fire was not meant to be caged. The Watcher laughed, a sound like metal grinding against bone, and raised his hand. The chamber shook, the rivers of energy flared, and from the shadows rose machines of war, great constructs shaped like beasts, their bodies forged from black steel, their weapons glowing. The soldiers opened fire, their voices lost in the roar of battle, the chamber filled with light and death, yet still Kara moved forward, her scars blazing, her fire answering the storm. The Watcher watched her come, unshaken, almost amused, as though he had seen this play before, as though every rebellion ended the same way, and he whispered that humans had forgotten the truth, that rebellion was never victory, only a slower death. Kara did not answer with words, she answered with fire, her marks exploding with light so bright that shadows fled from the chamber, and for the first time the Watcher's smile faltered. Still he stood, unbroken, unafraid, waiting for her to reach him, waiting for the battle that would decide more than Earth, more than humanity, but the fate of every world chained to the stars. The chamber shook with the roar of machines and the screams of dying men, the air heavy with smoke and fire, but Kara's eyes saw only him, the Watcher leader standing tall in the center of the throne, his black armor burning with red veins of power, his mask glowing like molten stone, his gaze fixed on her as if the battle around them meant nothing. Soldiers fought and fell, shadows clashed with light, yet the world narrowed to the two of them, rebel and god, and in that silence Kara felt her scars blaze hotter than ever, the fire inside her rising until her skin seemed to burn with stars. She stepped forward, her rifle long gone, her hands glowing with fire, and the Watcher raised his blade, a weapon of pure light that hissed like a living thing. Their clash tore through the chamber, her fire colliding with his blade, each strike shaking the walls, sparks of energy flying like meteors, rivers of power splitting the floor. The Watcher's voice thundered in her mind, "You are nothing but a shadow of those who failed before you. Every rebel ends in ashes, and you will be no different." Kara gritted her teeth, the heat scorching her lungs, and shouted back that maybe rebels burned, but even ash could choke a god. She struck again, her fire flaring so bright that the constructs faltered, soldiers turning their eyes in awe, and for the first time the Watcher staggered, his mask cracking under the heat. Yet his power was not broken. He roared, lifting his blade high, summoning the rivers of energy beneath the floor, and the chamber erupted as red lightning filled the air, tearing through walls and men alike, the ceiling shattering to reveal the cold stars above. Kara fell to her knees under the weight of it, her body shaking, the fire inside her flickering like a dying flame, and the Watcher loomed above, his blade raised for the final strike. For a moment she thought it was over, that the story of rebellion would end here like it had before, but then she saw the faces of her soldiers, blooded and broken yet still fighting, their eyes on her, not with fear but with hope, and she understood. The fire was never hers alone. It had always been humanity's, passed from one rebel to the next, carried through time like a hidden flame waiting for breath. She rose, her scars blazing brighter than ever, her fire no longer a flicker but a storm, and when the Watcher's blade came down she caught it with her bare hands. The chamber exploded with light, the fire surging through her body into the blade, into the Watcher, shattering his weapon into shards of molten light. He screamed, a sound that shook the stars, his armor cracking, his shadow burning away, and Kara pressed forward, every step filled with fire, until she placed her hand on his chest and unleashed everything. The light burst outward, a wave of fire that ripped through the throne chamber, tearing the Watcher apart in a storm of ash and molten shadow, his scream echoing into silence. The soldiers shielded their eyes, the constructs collapsed, and when the light faded, Kara stood alone in the ruins of the throne, her body trembling, smoke rising from her skin, her marks now burned into her like living fire. The God-Killer shuddered, alarms blaring as its power core cracked, the massive ship breaking apart under the weight of her strike. The commander shouted for retreat, soldiers rushing back toward the shuttle, but Kara stood for a moment longer, staring at the empty throne, knowing that a god had fallen and nothing would ever be the same. She turned and ran, leaping into the shuttle just as the chamber collapsed behind her, and as the engines roared, the God-Killer exploded in a burst of light so bright that even Earth below saw the heavens ignite. Across the galaxy the signal spread, enslaved worlds looking to the stars, seeing the fire burn, and whispers rose into shouts, "The rebels have returned, the gods can bleed, the fire lives again." On Earth, people poured into the streets, cheering not with the joy of victory but with the fierce cry of survival, for they knew this was not the end, only the beginning. Kara sat in silence as the shuttle drifted back to the fleet, her body weak, her hands still glowing faintly, her scars now etched deeper than ever, and when the commander asked what they should tell the people, she looked out at the stars and answered with a voice steady and calm, "Tell them the fire never dies."